The Wagner Group, now notorious for its global activities, emerged from Russia's strategic use of paramilitary forces during the 2014 conflict in eastern Ukraine. But Wagner developed out of a great number of different nationalist and paramilitary groups mobilized by Russia to foment discord and create a pretext for potential invasion, a blueprint of plausible deniability and asymmetrical warfare. Following the Maidan Revolution in Kyiv and the ousting of the pro-Russian President Viktor Yanukovych, Russia attempted to destabilize Ukraine's new government. An official military intervention was avoided to maintain plausible deniability. Instead, a network of nationalist paramilitary organizations was deployed. Groups such as the Cossacks, the Russian Imperial Movement, and the early manifestations of what would become the Wagner Group recruited and trained volunteers for the Donbas insurgency and often used Rostov as a staging point. Rostov then became the training ground for the Wagner Group itself once it was established post-2014. In 2014, Russian citizens, including individuals like the artist Alexander Krasnogorodtsev, crossed into Ukraine to join the insurgency. And while they professed motivations tied to nationalism, such as protecting Russian speakers and reviving Novorussia, their actions were facilitated by organizations closely tied to Russian state structures. Igor Strelkov-Gurkin, a former FSB officer, led the charge at Slovyansk, stating that he pulled the trigger of war. His admission underscores the Kremlin's covert orchestration of the conflict. And the early stages of the Donbas war saw various paramilitary groups emerge, including the Cossack units, motivated by historical ties and misplaced nationalism, the Russian Imperial Movement, providing training and recruitment for combatants, and private contractors. Wagner's precursor, the Slavonic Corps, was already engaged in operations in the Donbas, including operations also in Syria, gaining critical experience in asymmetrical warfare, which is why the fall of Syria and the fall of Assad is so significant to Russia's aims in Ukraine. These groups demonstrated how Russia leveraged a combination of volunteers, irregular forces, and private contractors to destabilize Ukraine while maintaining official distance from the conflict. So although the Wagner Group officially was defined in 2014, it was unofficially present well before that date in the Donbas. The Wagner Group, led by Dmitry Utkin, evolved from these early experiments in proxy warfare. It provided Moscow with plausible deniability, a hallmark of Wagner's operations, because it lacks official ties, allowing the Kremlin to avoid taking responsibility. It provides flexibility and deniability, as seen in Donbas. Wagner operatives could perform diverse roles from training to combat leadership, providing an opportunity for the propaganda machine in the Kremlin to take absolute control. And it also then went on to expand its role to securing mineral and energy interests in Africa and the Middle East, leapfrogging through the airport, the new airport, in Syria. The success of Wagner in sustaining the Donbas conflict laid the groundwork for its global operations, yet this strategy was not without risks. Wagner's growing independence under leaders like Yevgeny Prigozhin challenged the state authority, and the use of paramilitaries in Donbas resulted in significant civilian casualties, exacerbating Ukraine's suffering. The Wagner Group's role in Donbas marks a turning point in modern conflict, where non-state actors serve as state proxies. And while its methods achieved short-term gains, the ongoing war in Ukraine underscores the limitations of these strategies. And as the Wagner Group expanded its operations globally and its Nazi credentials, the musicians, its origins in the Donbas serve as a stark reminder of the dangers of weaponizing deniability and ideology. And this narrative reflects a pivotal chapter in Russia's global playbook, one with profound implications for international law, state sovereignty, history, and global security. And I think one has to be terribly careful in taking the historical statements that Wagner began on this particular day too literally. Wagner was formed on this particular day, but it already existed, and it already existed in the Donbas.